Joining us, Bernarda Villalona, former senior prosecutor, trial attorney, joining us in New York. Also with us, Jeffrey Wolf, criminal defense attorney in Denver, Colorado, and Joseph Marrone, another great criminal defense attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ladies first, of course, Bernarda. Come on. People know who this guy is. They know who the other two with the guns are. They've been patrolling that neighborhood for days. Someone's got to come forward. An 8-year-old girl is shot and killed. I mean, why would you not want to bring justice for that little girl? Why would you not want to make your neighborhood safer?
Vinny, you already know the slogan, snitches get stitches. And if this man, these group of people were capable of killing an 8-year-old girl, what do you think these people are going to worry about what will happen to them if they were to talk and give this guy up? Because there's no way that this guy is walking around with this type of long weapon, an AR-15 that's almost longer than him, and people don't know who he is. Obviously, people are scared. What I think may happen is that you may have a couple tips that are anonymous, but it's going to be very difficult to get someone to cooperate through trial to get a conviction in this case because the threat of retaliation is real.
Oh, absolutely. Starts with a tip. Starts with the tip. Absolutely. Joseph Marrone, the other thing that's happening in this story is this part of town completely transformed after the shooting death of Rayshard Brooks. Happened catty corner from where this shooting took place in that Wendy's parking lot. Police responded to a call there. They were met by, greeted by a mob. They were shoved. They were basically told to get out of there when they were responding to another shooting. And basically, it was like the wild, wild west down there, Joseph. What has to change here in cities like Atlanta and other places now where it's like the wild, wild west?
Well, what I think they need to do desperately is they need to get community leaders that have come forward, along with the mayor, who's very active. And I think she's very upset about this because it definitely it waters down the opportunity for their pushing racial justice and police accountability. And it also hurts the prosecution of Rayshard Brooks because you got to remember the people that live there. This is the potential jury pool, and they're scared and they're not happy. But I really think they need community involvement, and they need people to come forward and begin to make them understand the effectiveness of police and then to work with police on how they have to change and have better police policies. But if something isn't done to arbitrate this problem, okay, what you now have is some serious retaliation and has really kind of diluted whatever movement they were having as a result of this. And you know, and the other thing is they brought in the National Guard, which shows that they can't even handle their own business locally, which is not good for local morale. So, I mean, you know, this is a bigger problem that really needs to be dealt with, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Jeffrey Wolf, the problem here is you've got the protests, the anti-police sentiment, and it's understandable to a certain extent. But once you reach a certain point and then you've got no police, you've got 8-year-old girls getting shot because there's people walking around taking control of streets illegally, barricading streets. These are public streets. You're not allowed to just barricade a street, yet nothing is done to stop it because of what has been happening. How do we fix this? How do we get back to some semblance of law and order where, okay, the police get called when something bad happens. Someone is breaking the law, you can call the police.
Well, Vinny, what you have to understand is that just using the term law and order is a problem right now because these riots are the voice of the unheard. And what we're seeing in certain communities throughout our country is we're seeing local politicians get involved on a very local, small level and coming to these protests and making sure that people know their voices are heard. They're passing legislation. Here in Colorado, we passed the most comprehensive police reform bill within a week of the George Floyd protests. It went through, it got through on the first vote on both chambers of our House. Our school boards are involved. Denver Public Schools has removed police from the school. And people in our community are seeing action. They're not seeing lip service. And the violence that was coming with some of these protests is starting to dissipate. And I think that is what we need to start seeing. We need to start seeing the leaders, the local leaders, as was just pointed out, step up and do something. And the sooner they do something, the sooner these groups are going to start to be listening to the calmer heads that are in those groups, because there are extremely good community organizers and leaders in these groups in every city where these protests are happening, but their voices are getting drowned out when nothing is done. And that's when this violence comes into play, and that's when you have the disconnect between law enforcement and the public, and that leads to these types of tragedies, because this is a very real tragedy.
Bernarda, the whole point of police reform and everything else was to make things safer, right? Isn't it supposed to? It's about public safety, right? Less people dying, less people being hurt or shot. But the numbers are going up, 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 up as the police are being pulled out of these cities. I'm trying to figure out, isn't the end game here to make things safer so little girls like Secoria can go to the store with her mother without getting shot?
Vinny, that's the goal and that's the mission. Obviously, police officers, their mission is to keep the streets safe, to keep the streets safe. But unfortunately, right now, during this time, there is such a distrust for police officers and also a lack of respect for police officers. So if there's no trust, there's no respect for the legal community, for law enforcement, how is it that the cops are supposed to work with the community to try to make it safe? You need both of them to work together to keep the community safe. But right now, it seems it's just an all-out war against the people, the civilians, against the police officers. And it's just going to get worse and worse.
Joseph, the problem is when it gets worse and worse, it's innocent people who get killed, like little Secoria. And she's not the only child who's fallen to this increase in gun violence in cities. I mean, I'm trying to make some sense of this, and it's not making sense to me. It's not making sense, and it's about safety. Safety first, and things are less safe now than they were before.
Listen, you're definitely not going to defund the police department with these actions, that's for sure. You need police, and this at least, I think, answers that question. You can't defund the police department. Does the police department need an overhaul? Does it need to improve its policies and procedures? No question, and I think that would help out a lot. But you need to communicate with the community, the black leaders, and you need the black leaders to communicate to their community to make them assure their community that the police department are doing things to improve and work better with them. Because without a police department, I mean, you're going to have chaos and you're going to have events like this, which is, I mean, unspeakable. I mean, this young girl was with her family, her mother. She was parking to go somewhere, and she was gunned down. There was young kids running around with assault weapons. I mean, for it to get to this point, and the sad part is, you know, and I know this mayor does a great job down there. She really works hard, and she's really disappointed by this, and she's taken back. It really hurts whatever momentum she was getting with the local black leaders. I know there's a guy down there by the name of Killer Mike. He's a rapper, but he's a big community leader. He was outspoken during the George Floyd case. I mean, listen, what he has to do, guys like that, she has to continue to come forward and keep people together and let them work and try to get better. But when it goes in this direction, and then you've seen what happened. I already said it, the National Guard came, and that pretty much tells you that, you know, you can't handle your own business. So, I mean, that doesn't do much for the morale.
When we come back, we're going to talk about soldier Vaness Guillen. She was murdered. Her family is upset, but it goes beyond the murder. This was something that was brewing. There were issues at Fort Hood. And it's something that has to be looked at a lot closer because we need to keep our soldiers safe. They deserve it. We'll be right back.
My sister Vaness Guillen was sexually harassed, yet nothing was done to it. For her lacks of responsibility, safety, and respect, because they didn't respect my sister. They didn't keep my sister safe. They always try to cover up for each other. Why? My sister's a human too. She deserves respect. She deserves to be heard.
That's the sister of murdered Fort Hood soldier Vaness Guillen, and she's upset, and rightfully so. And a lot of what has upset her is not just the fact that her sister went missing, but everything surrounding when she went missing, and had to fight, and her voice was never heard. And a lot of it has to do with what they allege is the culture at Fort Hood. Chanley Painter has more.
The guy outranks her. He's bigger than her. So, okay, so he's not in her command. That's not a reason to say, oh no, there's no sexual harassment.
Attorney Natalie Kawam represents the family of murdered soldier Vaness Guillen. They maintain Guillen was sexually harassed by fellow soldier Aaron Robinson, despite denials from Army Command.
The criminal investigation has not found any connection between sexual harassment and Vanessa's disappearance.
Robinson is suspected of beating Guillen to death with a hammer on the Fort Hood Army post April 22nd and allegedly recruiting his married girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, to bury Guillen's dismembered remains. Military investigators suggest Robinson killed Guillen because she threatened to expose his affair with Aguilar. Kawam and the Guillen family aren't buying it.
They should have came to the American people and said, we screwed up. We lost a great soldier that did nothing wrong. But they didn't say that. Instead, they denied any wrongdoing. They denied the truth. And in fact, they lied because they said that there was no sexual harassment.
Guillen's murder revived concerns about a toxic culture toward women in the military and the code of silence that enables it.
Just because we don't see the problem doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Guillen's death sparked calls for an independent investigation and changes to the military's reporting structure for sexual misconduct.
Confidentiality is a key factor in people reporting, and if they feel that their the victimization or their story isn't going to be confidential, they're very hesitant.
There has to be a system in place that provides for a neutral third-party agency to review that complaint. Has no skin in the game.
The U.S. Army Forces Command sent a team to Fort Hood to inspect its sexual harassment prevention program, known as SHARP. According to the Department of Defense, the number of reports of sexual assault from service members has been on the rise since 2012. From 2018 to 2019 alone, the number of reports rose 3%, the DoD said in a report. In 2018, among active duty members, an estimated 24% of women and 6% of men said they experienced sexual harassment, up from 21% of women and 5% of men in 2016. Kawam said Guillen did not report through her chain of command because she feared blowback, and it appears she was not alone. In the wake of her death, service members are sharing their stories using the hashtag #IamVanessGuillen.
They're talking about how they were sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, demonized for saying something, beat up for saying something, kicked out for saying something.
The accounts echo what service members have said in surveys conducted by the Defense Department. Most incidents occur between people ages 17 to 24 who work or live together, and most reports come from junior enlisted women just like Guillen, whose alleged attacker is the same rank or one grade higher. Guillen's death has cast a harsh spotlight on Fort Hood, a city within the city of Killeen, Texas.
No one is safe on that base, and that's why we need a congressional investigation.
In March, 14 people were arrested in a prostitution sting, including 6 active duty members accused of agreeing to pay money for sex. The scandal is just another sign of the troubling culture that exists on the military base. Aware Central Texas is the family violence center just outside the gates of Fort Hood. Executive Director Misty Biddick says an influx of active duty service members has reached out for treatment as Guillen's story has spread through post.
When I see an influx of individuals that have the ability to seek services on post, seeking services off post, and not wanting any of that information to go to their command, that to me paints a picture that there is some distrust.
We're talking about soldiers. These are people who volunteer, who sacrifice everything to protect us. We need to protect them. I can't believe we're having this conversation in 2020. Let's bring back in the think tank. Jeffrey Wolf, should we trust the Army here to investigate themselves when it comes to issues like this?
100% no, Vinny. The military is the last bastion of places where people are not safe to deal with this kind of an issue. It's the place that Me Too forgot. The military has got a horrible statistic that we just saw, that 1 in 4 of their female service members are being sexually harassed, assaulted, and they're doing nothing about it. They're doing nothing to make the numbers go down. They're doing nothing to protect these women. They're doing nothing to protect these soldiers, the same soldiers that they say that they value more than anything on the planet, and they are doing nothing to protect them. It is a farce to think that they can police themselves. They've never been able to stop the rise and the uptick of this. They've never been able to make a female service member feel safe to be a female service member in this environment, or to report when something does happen, because the chain of command protects down, and you just do not see justice for these women. And you can see it in the case of Vaness Guillen, where she was missing for an elongated period of time. The military was doing very little to solve the issue. And finally, this girl comes forward and says that her boyfriend was involved and that she helped him dismember the body and try and destroy the body. And now they've got the body and they're saying there's no connection to the military. It's just disgusting. And to see what this family is being put through, and they are one of thousands of families dealing with this.
Bernardo, what's the solution here? Because this is a problem. These are our soldiers. There's enough danger in the world, enough enemies trying to get them. We need to make sure that they're safe here.
You know, Vinny, it's a shame and it's a tragedy on all levels. It's so unfortunate that Vanessa entered the Army to serve her country, but yet her country wasn't able to serve and protect her. It's unfortunate, the culture within the military of being quiet, of condoning, because technically if you are quiet, you are condoning this type of behavior. I think what the solution is that there should be maybe a special prosecutor or a special unit aside from the military to do these types of investigations. Because the reality is that they try to hide everything within the military, but you can't hide a homicide. You cannot hide a body when that person has family that is outside the military. Unfortunate for these soldiers is that they are around the same people all day, 24/7. So you're stuck and contained with the same individuals that may be sexually harassing you. And it's so unfortunate for Vanessa that she had to die this way, and that her country that she chose to serve could not serve and protect her. We need an outside agency to do these investigations so they can do one that is not biased or tainted.
Joseph Marrone, can a story, can a case, can a tragedy like this make a difference and maybe turn the corner for change?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why. There's always an egregious event. I mean, not to take us back, but George Floyd was an off-the-chart egregious event that just woke the whole country up and has caused people to do things they normally wouldn't do to help change the situation. Well, this is sexual harassment goes on all the time in the military, and it's reported. They whitewash it all the time. Nobody really checks it, and nobody gets held accountable for it. But it took, unfortunately, this woman's horrible death, gruesome death, by a soldier, where a woman allegedly was reporting sexual harassment or sexual assault, went to her friends, and the military did nothing. They did discover the body, and all they're doing is trying to obviously be sympathetic to the family and investigate the case, but they won't admit that they knew anything about this sexual harassment. But obviously there was, and it's bringing enormous light to the situation. So I think this event is going to cause outside investigations. It's going to cause Congress. They're going to take testimony in front of Congress. They're going to have an outside agency, and it's going to bring together the right people to put the pressure, investigate, and hold people accountable inside the military, so at least they can begin to depress this problem. And that's where I think you're at.
We have to support our soldiers. We have to. When we come back, the story of baby Noah. It's a tragic story, and we've got some horrible details to share with you, but it's another case in trial we are tracking right here on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae with your legal news break, starting with shocking allegations in a case that we've been following closely. The lawyers for the family of an EMT killed during a police raid in a lawsuit filed on behalf of Breonna Taylor's estate against three officers, claims that the search warrant executed on Taylor's Louisville, Kentucky home was part of a gentrification plan. The amended complaint details a real estate development project happening on a street where Taylor's ex-boyfriend lived. It accuses the police of focusing a task force on that neighborhood to help the project move forward with demolition of certain houses. Taylor was not the subject of the no-knock search warrant executed on her home back in March. Police were looking for her ex and did not find him or any drug-related items in her home. They say they were returning fire from Kenneth Walker when they entered her residence. An unarmed Taylor was fatally shot multiple times. Charges against Walker were later dropped. The mayor says the accusations made in the lawsuit regarding the real estate development are false and outrageous. And the woman at the center of the Jeffrey Epstein sex scandal will learn next week if she'll be granted bail. British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell is scheduled for arraignment and a bail hearing on July 14th for her alleged involvement in a child sex ring run by Epstein. Prosecutors say they'll ask that Maxwell be remanded pending trial due to her access to money, overseas connections, and her citizenship in France and the UK. The FBI announced that Maxwell's arrest last week after a grand jury indicted her on several charges, include conspiracy to entice minor girls to travel for illegal sex acts. The 58-year-old has previously called the claims against her, quote, absolute rubbish. And a federal judge has ordered a temporary shutdown of the controversial Dakota Access Pipeline. The judge ruled that the pipeline must be shut down by August 5th and emptied for an in-depth environmental review. This ruling, a major win for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and environmental groups who have fought against the pipeline for years. The Army Corps of Engineers says it will take about 13 months to create that environmental impact report. That's it for your Court TV News Break. Vinny, back to you.
Julie Janae, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, folks, next story, awfully tragic, involving the death of a little baby. 2-year-old baby Noah is dead. The defendant in the case, his own mother, and today was declared competent to stand trial. That means there will be a trial for the mother of baby Noah. Julie Grant has more.
Noah, everyone loved you.
Baby Noah Tomlin's sudden disappearance rocked the community of Hampton, Virginia.
They've checked under houses, they've checked in sheds, they've checked cars. I'm hoping they checked the trash cans. I'm hoping that's why it hasn't been picked up. They've had drones out here, they've had dogs out here.
The 2-year-old was living in the Bayside Mobile Home Village with his mother, Julia Tomlin, and 2 other siblings. The morning of June 24th, 2019, Tomlin reports baby Noah missing, and a massive search ensues.
We put so many different sets of eyes on the immediate search area.
Law enforcement and community members teaming up, searching for baby Noah.
So any scrap of clothing, any diapers, any evidence that may lead us in a particular direction, we want to take that into consideration.
At the Hampton landfill, city crews sift through 2 million pounds of garbage, hoping baby Noah could still be alive.
We feel very confident that we have exhausted all reasonable efforts and all reasonable resources in our search area.
Then on day 10, a grisly discovery. Baby Noah is found dead at the Hampton Steam Plant, the place where city waste goes to burn. His autopsy results revealing his skull was fractured in 2 places. The cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head with signs of battered child syndrome. The manner of death, homicide.
We'll always love you, and Jesus will take care of you.
Julia Tomlin told investigators her baby hit his head while in the bathtub unattended and drowned. But investigators found her story to be inconsistent with the horrific evidence in the case. The 35-year-old is charged with murder, unlawful disposal of a dead body, and child neglect.
And this is a defendant, a woman, a mother who had prior abuse allegations. This was a baby that had been in foster care earlier. Let's bring back in our think tank, Bernarda. Unfortunately, we see this, and I wonder, ultimately the person who commits the crime is the one that is responsible. But when you're talking about a baby and you're talking about a child like this, it seems that the system let this child down as well.
Yeah, the system definitely failed this child. The system definitely failed Noah. It's so unfortunate that this woman who gave birth to this angel, to this child who's 2 years old, who can't fight back, who can't protect himself, who can't yell for help or call for help, but yet the same person that's designed to protect the baby is the one who takes away his life. Departments, those agencies that are open to look over kids where there are allegations of some kind of neglect, they also failed Noah. And unfortunate, because of their failure, Noah is no longer here. Noah did not have anyone fighting for him. Noah didn't have anyone speaking up for him. Noah did not have anyone, period.
Joseph Marrone, you think when we get to trial, we're going to hear the old story about the child hit his head on the bathtub, and this was all just an accident, like a child accidentally drowning in the pool in the backyard? I've heard that one before too.
Well, it depends. So here's why it depends. If the evidence is overwhelming, and it looks like it, that this lady, I don't call her a lady, I don't want to call her, but she abused this child, I think what the defense team is going to do is they're going to take those medical reports, even though she's competent to stand trial. There's probably evidence in there that she has mental illness. She's going to probably, if they won't make a plea deal, she'll plead open. She's going to put herself at the mercy of the court. She's going to ask for various mitigating factors, and she's going to say she had a mental illness. She may have been on drugs, and she's going to take the best case scenario. It's not life in prison, and I think that's what's going to happen. They'll never try this case. This case is horrific.
Jeffrey Wolf, and I don't know what the facts are going to play out here, but in similar cases like this, there's always seems to be drugs circulating around all of it, especially when it comes to the death of these children. And the part I don't understand is, why do these parents, they've got drug issues, they know they do, they've got a baby, how can they not understand that there are people who will take care of these children? There were people who will welcome these children with open arms and love them and nurture them and protect them. And they and their drug problems or whatever issues that they're dealing with can go deal with it and try to get yourself okay. But just, you know what? I understand it's your child, but do what's best for your own child. How does that not happen?
Well, I think it's easy to say, why don't they just get the help they need? Why don't they just get the kid the resources the kid needs? But we see it all too often. The resources are often not there. We're looking at, obviously, a low-income family when we see the scene and we see the type of home that she was living in with Noah. We have a person who comes from a low-income neighborhood. They don't necessarily get the same resources from the Department of Human Services or Child Protective Services or whatever they call it in Virginia. And as a result, they don't know that there are people out there, and there aren't always people out there. There is this huge idea that every child could have a good home, that there are always people who need a child, want a child. But number one, kids that go into foster care or into the system are often abused as bad or worse than they were in their home. And number two is that those kids from those low-income homes that come with those problems, that come with those, learning disabilities and things that can come from having a parent who used drugs either before, during, or after the childbirth, they don't always have an easy home to go to, because there are a lot of foster families out there that don't want to take on that extra burden and don't want to do the right thing by those kids. And so when we talk about why didn't the mom get the kid out of there, that is not something, number one, that she was necessarily mentally capable of doing. And number two, the system is the problem here. And when, before, again, I don't want to go backwards like we did before, but when we talk about defunding the police, we're not talking about getting rid of police. We're talking about taking money that we spend on tanks and tear gas and other things that are destroying our communities and putting it back into the systems that these people need to have a social net that can catch them when this happens, so that there are resources for babies like Noah, so that his mother isn't left to her own devices to do whatever happened here or leave baby Noah with nowhere to turn.
When we come back, the story that everyone is talking about today, the death of Mary Kay Letourneau. And our condolences go out, obviously, to her family, especially her children. But Mary Kay Letourneau raped a 13-year-old boy when she was 34 and ended up marrying him. So the question I posed today on social media, was that a love story, or was that some sort of perverted, twisted sex crime? Your verdict when we come back.
I regret not knowing more about the criminal justice system.
That's Mary Kay Letourneau. There she is in court. She didn't know much about the criminal justice system. She raped a 13-year-old boy. She went to prison. She got pregnant twice. She did 7 years. She got out. Then she married her victim. And they stayed married for 12 years. This story was sold as a love story in France. That's how they viewed it. And it was sold as a crime story here in the United States. And that's what I posted today on social media. I said, the story of Mary Kay Letourneau and her relationship, was that a love story? Or is that some sort of twisted, perverted sex crime story? We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day. And tonight it comes from Shai, who writes, he took care of her in her last hours, which is absolutely true. Twisted crime turned twisted love story. I wonder if it was really love after he came of age or some kind of Stockholm syndrome. Anyway, the kids lost their mom. I don't wish that kind of pain on anyone. And our thoughts again with the children of Mary Kay Letourneau. But Bernarda, how do you see this one? Do you see it as a love story or some sort of twisted sex crime here?
Vinny, come on. This woman is a predator. She is, or she was, a predator since she's now dead. I really feel for her kids to think that at the age of 35, you are a school teacher. You are supposed to teach kids what the studies are supposed to be, not teach sex ed and do one-on-one performances with a child that is 12, 13 years old. You took advantage of that. You took advantage of the gullibility of this child, the innocence of this child. You just took advantage of all of that. I think she is a predator. There's no love story. It actually disgusts me.
Syed writing tonight, what about relationships who currently have a huge age gap, like 20 plus years? Are they sick or is that normal? Jeffrey, I think the important number is not 20. The important number is he was 13 at the time. She was his teacher in 2nd grade and then again in 6th grade, and that's when it all started.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that is the difference because, yeah, it's very easy to say what's 20 years when somebody's 50 and somebody's 30. But when you're talking about somebody who met somebody as a child and groomed them, presumably throughout that process, that's where you start to think about why does the age of consent exist? Because a child's mind can't form the type of relationship that would make a nice, long, loving, lasting relationship. It's something that an adult who gets involved with somebody that old, it's a big problem, and it's not a love story, and it's certainly a very unique story in American crime history because usually these stories end with somebody either in prison for the rest of their life or at least not having any contact, not getting back together and having children together. It's one of the more twisted stories that I've ever seen in any of the crime history of America. But there's a big difference between meeting an adult who is significantly younger than you and meeting a 2nd grader and then again a 13-year-old and being found in the car together. I mean, it's night and day.
Jessica tonight, all y'all saying she paid for her crime or whatever, What if that were a guy that molested a minor? That's what I thought. Disgusting. Joseph Marrone, is this at all looked at differently because it was the woman who was the sex offender?
Well, I think it maybe have been a little bit more sympathetic because it was an adult woman. But it's still, listen, it was sick. She had 4 kids at the time. She was 32 years old. But if it was a male, 32-year-old male preying on a 12-year-old or 13-year-old girl, it definitely would have looked at more egregious. And obviously, I don't think he would have gotten 7 years. He would have probably gotten a lot more time. And I don't, listen, the whole thing is bizarre. And I think she really had mental issues throughout this whole process. And I don't, and it's sad she died. And I don't really want to comment any further.
Yep. Understandable. Understandable. I mean, she had children. David writes tonight, rape is a terrible word. To say she raped him is extremely debatable. I don't care what anybody says. A man raping a woman is very different to a woman raping a man. The only thing I would say to David here is that it wasn't a man. It was a 13-year-old boy, and that's what makes it so much different. But anyway, great job tonight. Bernarda Villalona, Jeffrey Wolf, Joseph Marrone, really appreciate your thoughtful comments and your insight tonight. Please come back on the show again.
Yeah,
Thanks,
have a
Vinny.
great night, Vince.
All right, folks, that'll do it for tonight. And again, the death of Mary Kay Letourneau is it's very mixed, right? You don't wish that on kids anywhere. She died at a young age, just 58 years old. But again, a very, very strange and sad tale. But we'll leave it there. Anyhow, folks, we're here every night, Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 p.m., bringing you deep into the world of crime and justice. Have a wonderful night. And I know with the story we just did, this sounds strange, but anyhow, you know what I mean. Don't forget to hug the kids.